The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, where we are devoted to conversations of consequence that help democracy thrive. It's Thursday, November 13th, and I'm Lee Friedman, Executive in Residence at Cuyahoga Community College and a member of the City Club Board of Trustees. I'm honored today to introduce our forum, which is the annual David Warshawski Memorial Forum, where we are considering the case for college. A personal note, I want to recognize the Warshawski family. Kitty, who is a longtime colleague of mine, and her family have been nothing but supportive and gracious and generous. Thank you for being here. This is a bit personal for me. I spent a lot of my career on making the case for college and post-secondary, and I think it's a very important conversation for us to be having, not just locally, but nationally. And for that matter, much of the last 50 years, research has very clearly suggested that college was the key to unlock the American dream, and a college degree not only ensured a route to a stable career, but also was strongly correlated with future financial well-being. Yet, in recent years, the cost of education has skyrocketed, and some have challenged the assumption. But more than 15 million students are enrolled in undergraduate programs around our country at 4,000 institutions. And despite the headlines around elite private schools, most of them are enrolled in public universities and colleges. Actually, over 70% of our college students are enrolled in public institutions. And that includes community colleges, state schools that prioritize affordability alongside educational quality. So what is the case for college these days? Joining us on the stage to discuss this is Timothy Fields, the co-author of the best-selling book, The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions. With 30 years of experience in higher education, Fields currently serves as Senior Associate Dean in Undergraduate Admissions at Emory University, where he helps lead the recruitment, evaluation, and enrollment of the freshman class every year. Also with us is University of Akron President R.J. Nemer, who began his tenure at the university in May 2024. Prior to being named president, Nemer served as the dean of the University of Akron College of Business for more than 2 years. During his time as dean, he increased enrollment, student opportunities, and experiential learning. He expanded branding as well as forged and renewed regional, national, and global relationships. Now, this is my favorite part. You'll all understand. Moderating the conversation today is my dear friend and my colleague, Dr. Michelle Scott Taylor, the Chief Executive Officer of College Now Greater Cleveland, which is the nation's first and also pioneering education access organization serving 42,000 individuals every year and distributing over $9.6 million in scholarships annually. A reminder to our live stream audience, if you have questions during the Q&A portion of the forum, you can text it to 330-541-5794, and City Club staff will try to work it into the program. So members and friends of the City Club, please join me in welcoming President Nemer and Tim Fields. On to you, Michelle.
Thank you. Okay, hi everybody. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. It is truly wonderful to see you all here today while we try to make the case for college. We are ready to lean into a conversation that could not be more timely, more consequential for our students, our community, and our country. So now, the case for college may sound simple, but the truth is, when skepticism is high, as Lee pointed out, this is an invitation for us to think deeply about what college really means now, because the definition has changed and the value has changed. For generations, a college degree was the surest path to opportunity. And I could say that firsthand, and I bet many of you in the room can say that as well. It leads to better jobs, financial stability, and honestly, a fuller life. But as journalist William Bunch reminds us in his book that I just finished reading today, after the ivory tower falls, the story of college is now much more complicated than ever. We've reached a crossroads in higher ed. It was once the great equalizer, but today it can feel like it's a dividing line. Some people would suggest it might be an institution of oppression. So in this conversation, we're not just talking about skyrocketing tuition, test scores, rankings. We want to talk about trust. Trust in education as a public good, which I hope many of you still feel that way. And that trust is that every young person, for us, no matter the zip code, no matter the income, no matter the color of their skin, where they come from, they all deserve a pathway to prosperity and success. So, I'd like to take a second to start with our first question, if that's okay. And then we already said we're gonna make this conversational. Is that okay with y'all? They're gonna answer as they see fit. We're gonna chime in. We're gonna make this lively. I just said, let's make this edutainment so that you all walk away feeling good about your time spent here today. So, our opening prompt. What do you think people today misunderstand about the value and the purpose of a college education?
I'll take that one. I want to backtrack a little bit because it pertains to how I can answer that, Michelle. My career in academia has been very short. It was basically what was shared about me. Prior to being in education, I actually founded a sports agency that I scaled and then sold to IMG, and then I ran IMG Golf globally. So for over 20 years, I was in industry. The reason I share that with you is when I became the dean of the College of Business, and Akron is my alma mater both for business and law, I really started to look at who were the young people that were the most successful, both in the interview process and after they were hired. What did they have that differentiated them from other applicants? And then we tried to incorporate those things, those experiential things, into our curriculum. I think a lot of what's misunderstood about college is people say, oh, it's just so expensive and I can go get a job anyway. What they miss is not only do they miss the core of academia as to what you're learning in the classroom, but they're missing the critical thinking components. They're missing the opportunities to be leaders in student groups. They're missing the opportunity to engage and have to work with a group of people. You know, I always say to my kids, both of whom did undergrad, and I'll say, you know, they'll say, oh, I'm on a project with people I don't really like working with. And I said, but that's the real world. And that's where you're gonna, like, I don't like everybody I work with. Except the people that are here. I like all of you. But it's learning those skills. Those are the things that I think is missed. People say, oh, well, you know, why would I go to college? I'm not gonna be a psychologist. Why would I take psychology as a gen ed? You're missing the point. You're learning discipline. You're learning time management. You're learning critical thinking. You're putting yourself out of your comfort zone. That's worth an investment in yourself. That helps you propel regardless of what path you're going to take.
Yeah, the only thing that I would probably add to that is just what is the network that you get from going to a college or university? What is the collection of people? I think many of us, in this room can think of those of us who went to college, like we have friends, we have people that we lean upon that we met in those years in college, and they're very much a part of kind of our daily lives. I would, also add it's kind of the prism in how we see, college. Often college is looked at as, and I'll talk more about this, these 150 highly selective schools in the country, and those schools people deem are successful. They're also many of the most expensive places in the country. But as was mentioned, there are 4,000 college universities. Most students go to those other schools. College is accessible 80% of the time at the majority of schools. So a lot of times people, kind of square college at these highly selected places that educate less than 2% of the greater population, when that's not the case.
Okay, thank you. All right.
We doing okay?
No, you're doing good.
Okay.
Good job. All right, let's talk a little bit about the value of higher education and the return on investment. You did mention that costs are skyrocketing. We all know it. For those of you who have teenagers or you've just graduated kids, or even for yourself, the cost was exorbitant. Let's talk a little bit about the return on investment. We do know that 42% of all jobs by 2031 will require a BA or a BS degree. Can you talk a little bit about how do you communicate the value even on potential earnings to families and students who believe that the cost is not worth the investment? What are some strategies you use at your institutions and in your work?
Yeah, so I just immediately just kind of go to, I think a lot of times we have conversations in higher education inside the bubble. And we talk in terms and we assume people know all of this information surrounding, what are the lifelong earnings. And so just very simply, for a student who graduates with just a high school degree, they're going to make less that in the lifetime over somebody who gets a college degree. And I think the numbers are over a lifetime, averaging out, somebody with a college degree will make $3 million versus somebody who just goes to high school make $1.5 million over their lifetime, and that's an average. So just one time the first thing is just, what are the actual real numbers that are out there? But I think the other part, as far as kind of thinking about as we go about talking about this, is what are the things outside of I have a job, I'm making money? People who graduate from college have better mental health, have better physical fitness. So there are other things that come along with not only getting a college degree and the money that comes along with it, but also the other things that outside the classroom that can help you out in that process.
We approach it, and being at the University of Akron, we're the most affordable option of state schools in the state. But I always say to our prospective students, it's still a big investment. It's still a lot of money that you're spending. We have around 90%, just over 90% of those that graduate the University of Akron are employed or pursuing a higher education, or a postdoctorate or post-bachelor degree, or are in the armed services. So that return is showing pretty quickly. And our student is very much how much is it going to cost me, how long is it going to take me, and what can I expect to make when I come out? And we try to provide, whether he or she is pursuing something in health and human sciences or engineering or whatever it is, we try to provide, probably echoing what Tim said, that real world data to say, these are the facts. And, what I've always said is if you're going to kind of spend on a luxury, education is probably not a bad way to get that back, in terms of I could either buy a nice car or go on a nice vacation or send my child to school. Your biggest return is going to be increasing, what's in what I always refer to as their toolbox. The more education you get, the more tools you have in your box. The more tools you have, the different things you can build. And I want to see our students equipped to build whatever they want.
Okay, sounds good. So many people know I went to college and I majored in extracurriculars. And I had a great time doing it. It was quite fun. So
that worked out well for you.
It did. I'm a University of Akron alum, by the way. I forgot to shout us out. Go Zips, yay! And a whole bunch of other colleges and universities too.
That we won't talk about today.
That we will not talk about today. It's only going to be Akron. How can colleges better connect learning to earning? But what I want you to focus on is, how do we not lose sight of education's deeper purpose, which I feel like I gained completely outside of the classroom?
Yeah, so when one of the things one of my former colleagues said is, don't let your college education get in the way of your college experience. Oh. But I think, one of the things as far as extracurriculars, involvement outside the classroom, it kind of all adds on to the experience that you're having in college. And I think it's many of those real world experiences that you have. Leading up to this, we were just talking about just having to be in an environment where you have to have dialogue with people who maybe have different experiences than you, come from different places, maybe have a different perspective, viewpoint, whatever the case is. And you are in a classroom and you have to kind of grapple with those differences of opinion. And the truth is somewhere in the middle, but you're having those conversations, you're meeting people.
In a safe place.
In a safe place, in a very safe place, and where you have people, faculty, administrator, staff, kind of having these conversations together. So I think that part of it is very important, just learning to engage with different people. Similar to my kids, I'll say, hey, do the dishes. Hey, he didn't do it. That's not fair. I'm like, fair is a place where they judge pigs. So fair does not really exist. And I think, college presents an environment in which you can learn that, maybe what you think or maybe your perspective, maybe be different than what's really going on. But I think that's where true learning takes place within those environments, and where people are free to express their ideas and hear from people who maybe have different ones.
It sounds like you're saying that what colleges do already to show the opportunities for earning is putting students in real life experiences that they'll need once they step off the college campus, where it's not necessarily so safe, and they're equipped to be able to manage in life after education.
Absolutely.
I think it helps them find their voice, to be able to share in that safe space. And, when I speak to some incoming cohorts, I always say that one of the biggest things about coming to college is finding your people. We have 300 different student organizations at UA, from beekeeping to building a hydraulic rocket. Finding your people, finding kind of those people where you could feel you belong, where you feel that you have that kind of common interest, that common thread. And it's very cliche to say, to be your best version of you, but that really is what it allows. And I think also for this generation in particular, not that long ago, I was, my daughter was home, and so we're talking. She picked up her phone, then she put it down. Then she picked up her phone and she put it down. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, and she's an educated, smart woman, and she said, "Well, I'm talking to one of my friends." And I said, "Well, why don't you just pick up the phone and call her?" And she said, "Well, Dad, people don't really do that anymore." But if you can't have that sort of conversation, if you can't sit across from somebody and have a difference of opinion and still walk away out of the room with respect for that other opinion. I always say to the folks that work with me, I say, I never learn when I'm talking. And so to be in a room where you're listening and hearing different ideas and agreeing to disagree, you can't get that sort of experience. What you do in the real world, but not to the extent that you can so freely and so unencumbered as you do in a university classroom.
And the other thing is, gonna just kind of date myself, is, we talk about more than likely for the students that are in this room, if you will go to college, we'll say go to college, more than likely the jobs, careers that you are gonna go into do not exist. The reality is when I started school, email did not exist. Yes, I'm that old. And then to see...
Don't say that.
I'm speaking for me. I'm speaking for me. I'm
Oh,
speaking for
God.
me.
Oh,
So you think about, email not existing in the very early 90s, and then fast forward to where we are now with AI and the advent of all the technology, and the fact that, talking about supercomputers, and we all, if it have a cell phone, have almost a supercomputer in our wallets or purses. If you think about that, you think about what is needed: critical thinking skills, writing skills, communication skills. These are things that are going to be critical, because we are unsure what the job market is going to look like, but we are going to need those foundational skills in order to be successful in whatever the marketplace looks like as it continues to grow.
sounds good. Okay, so you talked a little bit about students finding their people and finding their place. And at college now, we talk a lot about how to help students find their best fit. It's almost a buzzword, but it really does mean something. And it speaks to this idea of where do you feel like you can learn and grow and develop and find your people and make friends and develop community. But what does fit look like today for students, given what we now hear in the zeitgeist about higher education and its value? How are you all communicating and helping students figure out if your institution is a good fit. And what does that mean? Sorry, that was a bunch of questions.
Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, so I'll just begin to just very, practical information. As we think about fit and as go around the country giving kind of book talks about college admission, navigating the space, we say fit in general should factor on four things. First, cost. We can't talk about college without talking about cost. How are we going to fund this educational experience? And it's different from all ways, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next is location. What is the location that I want to be, attend college in? The reality is most students attend college within 200 miles of where they were born, but there is a growing amount of students that are going further to go to college. So what is that location? Is it an urban environment? What part of the country is it in? What is weather, et cetera, et cetera. So what's the location? And then major. What are the majors that are offered? I encourage students to think about 3 different areas of major they're interested in, because if you center this decision around one particular major, and then you get to that school and you don't want to major in that, then what is your time going to be spent on that school? And 75% of students change their mind about what they want to major in within the first year. So that's why I say have a second, third, and maybe a fourth option, because at many institutions you're going to come and you're going to be introduced to things that maybe you haven't even known about. Like at Emory, we have 80 different majors. So at most high schools, you have 6 or 7 academic areas. There might be things that you don't even know about that this college or university could introduce. So we have cost, location, major, and then career. What are the research opportunities? What are the internship opportunities? What are opportunities outside of the classroom that will help you go on to whatever area you want to major in or you want to go on in a career? So we want people to think about those 4 things as far as thinking about fit. Now, I also add there's X factors. There's, do you want big college football? Do you want to be a part of sorority or fraternity? Are there additional resources that you may need as pertains to learning differences or things of that nature that may play into that? I had one gentleman one time, he asked me 4 different questions about food. How late are y'all open? How many different places? And I do not know where that young man ended at, but food was very important to him as he go about making this decision. So I think fit, is in general, but those 4 core areas I think are very important. At Emory, I think as we think about fit, we think about people wanting to be part of a larger community. We think about people wanting to, kind of what do they want to do as far as their academic interest. And then, what is their voice? Who is this person? How are they going to come into this community? So as we go about thinking about how we're going to put together our community at Emory, at the forefront is this going to be somebody who wants to be part of a larger community? Yes, there are students who are very bright. They can come and be successful at any institution, but we very much want people who are going to engage in this larger community that we have in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah, not much to add. I think you covered quite a bit of it, Tim. The only thing I would add, and it's really to our students from Shaker, when I was deciding on undergrad, I was more concerned with having fun my senior year. And so I never went to look at a school, and I applied. I'm like, yeah, this one is fine. The first time I saw the school is when my parents dropped me off at the dorm, and I was like, oh no. And I went there a year, and then I transferred to Akron. So my advice to you is spend time looking. And you should look at, what's an urban school look like? What's a small school look like that maybe isn't a suburb? What does something that's rural look like? What's big look like? What's small look like? Because, I always say to folks who come visit Akron, we aren't going to be the right fit for everybody. I would love to be in the conversation and have you come check it out, but I'm realistic enough to know that, different things appeal to different people. If you want a winning football team, there might be other choices in Akron, in Ohio. But aside from that, but if you want a winning soccer team, we're good. So, kind of look and see what feels right for you.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to what I think is the elephant in the room, and it is still about this cost. Why does higher ed cost so much? Like, what are y'all doing? It's very difficult for the students that we serve to afford kind of the colleges they would love to go to. Now, yes, there are many colleges that are affordable and accessible, but sometimes students want to go to their dream school that they grew up thinking about and maybe visiting or watching the football team. What's going on in higher ed? What's the cost?
So let me start now. I'm going to put my selective school Ivy League type of hat on and just kind of provide some context. Emory University has about 1,500 undergraduate students at their Atlanta campus. We have an Oxford College campus, and the current sticker price is roughly about $83,000 for tuition, room, and board. And so at places similar like Emory, that is a big number. I also share the number. We give away over $250 million in financial aid, so we want to make it accessible. However, half of the people at Emory are not on financial aid. They are paying full freight. And that is also true at a lot of the other more selective schools. So while, yes, the majority of us do not have the means to cut a check to pay full tuition at not only a place like Emory, but a local public institution, there are people who are paying that, which is driving that price up. So it becomes more simply a supply and demand issue. There are people who are there, and then you add the international population who also have access, and international students have to pay full financial aid at all these institutions. They are driving up the price. And so while the majority of us don't have the luxury to be in that place, there is a large segment of the population in the United States and in the world who are able to pay the price, and that's what's pushing that up at is specifically those private institutions.
Okay, I'll hear that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not saying it's right.
No.
I'm just saying it's what's happening.
I thought of a new tagline for Akron: 4 years for the price of one at Emory. But out of respect for my new friend, it's like anything else, folks. I mean, the second highest line item I have on our budget as a university is our facilities. I mean, my electric bill for our university is close to $10 million a year for electric. So I promise you, it's not in salaries. Our faculty are not living a high life. People that are in higher ed are in it out of passion. They're in it to give back. They're in it to enrich lives of others. They're not in it to live a high lifestyle. But it is expensive. We try, and I would say the vast majority of our students are not paying rack rate. We have a very active financial aid office. We give out scholarships. We work with College Now. We have partnerships with one of our biggest supporters, Jimmy Malone, is in the room, who funds scholarships for our students. So we are very aware that while we are affordable, relatively speaking, it's still a lot of money, but some of it is truly out of our control.
I do want to say this, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of families and students. The idea of going to college for free isn't really a thing. Everybody's going to have to make some semblance of an investment in their college education. And there are a lot of times people are like, we don't want any loans. And I say loan is not a bad four-letter word, all right? Depending upon your situation, it could be an investment in what is you want to do. And so, I mentioned, how much Emory costs, but Emory has some very, progressive financial aid packages to where, depending upon household income, we may fully fund a student for all of 4 years. So if a student said, hey, I want to come to Emory, and, Emory said, hey, we're going to give you $75,000 each year to come to Emory. And then you have to come up with $5,000 in a loan. Over, 4 years, that's $20,000. I'm not saying $20,000 isn't a lot of money. But if I say I give you $300,000 and you just have to invest $20,000, I think that's a conversation worth having, thinking about what your lifelong earnings are. And so I just want everybody to know, yes, the cost of higher education is high, but also I think people need to go into it that there needs to be some investment at the family level as far as that we are going to have to pay some semblance amount of money, because very few people are going to college for absolutely free and not paying any money at all.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so the other elephant in the room, at least I think so, is really around the changing political landscape that we now exist in. And so I know we believe the mission of higher education is to prepare thoughtful, capable, and inclusive citizens. In Ohio especially, things are changing, and across the country, things are changing in terms of how people view the role of higher ed, how they view those who are accessing higher ed, and their views on what higher education is producing. Can you talk a little bit about how you all are trying to maintain an inclusive, welcoming and supportive environment for what I'm going to call the newer demographic that is trying to get into higher ed, but now there's barriers being put up all around?
Yeah, so I'll start. I think, one of the things is just kind of address kind of what are the changes that have taken place. I think that one of the biggest changes is the Supreme Court decision in 2023 that kind of removed race from being able to considered as far as in college admissions decisions. In my 20 years in admission, race never defined a decision. It was defined based upon the students' attributes as far as their academic, extracurriculars, what people were saying about them, those type of things. And so I think that was one hurdle. I won't, speak for, RJ. I'm sure he'll do a great job of doing that. But I would say all institutions are still very much committed to having a diverse student population, however that is defined on their campus. The rules have changed. How do we go about evaluating applications? How do we go about recruiting students? How do we go about trying to make a diverse community within the current constraints that we have been put forward by the federal government? And then what's happening in a lot of instances is because of these instances, schools are not willing to put their federal funding or any additional dollars at risk. And so they are saying, these are the rules, we're going to operate within those rules. However, we're going to do everything that we can to try and create a diverse campus. I can say the work that I do at Emory in my 20 years there has not changed from the Supreme Court decision now. Now, how I go about doing that work absolutely has changed given kind of the legal landscape, but the work as far as saying how can we make the best class possible to have as many diverse perspectives, views, and people on this campus is still very much a priority. Unfortunately, how we go about doing that has changed given the many changes that have taken place.
It sounds like you're saying that costs are skyrocketing. And if we want to try to mitigate that, when we get mad at our institutions for making all these changes, many of us are really like, come on now, come on, don't fall, don't fall. What you're saying is some institutions have to do what they have to do to maintain the funding that they do have, because otherwise costs will continue to rise. So some of it is you're playing the game to try to stay in the game. Is that a way to?
So in Ohio, Senate Bill 1 was enacted, which did abolish DEI on college campuses. It's a law, so we have to comply with a law. I will often get asked, what's your opinion of it? I don't have the luxury of giving you my opinion on it, because there are going to be people that are for it and people that are against it. And I want both of those people to be students at the University of Akron. So what I always say is we shouldn't need a law or an absence of a law to be welcoming for everybody. You shouldn't need a name on an office door to be welcoming to everybody. You should be authentically welcoming to everybody. And that's who we are at the University of Akron. And that's why our student base continues to be diverse, continues to mirror our community, continues to mirror the demographics in Northeast Ohio and beyond as we grow. And that's how we approach it.
Very good. Okay, so in a couple minutes, we're going to invite you all for questions, but I'm going to ask my last question here, if that's okay. All right, so we want to sustain a thriving democracy. We want to have a competitive economy. So in college in all its forms, I still think is very much a public good and not just a private luxury. I hope you all feel the same. To us, the question is not whether or not college is worth it. It's really how do we ensure it's worth it for everyone? So my final question is, if you can redesign, no, let me ask this one, this is better. What gives you hope about the future of higher education? Because many of us, we're like, come on, it's scary times. What gives you hope?
I mean, I think having the luxury to work in admission and travel the country and talk with students and hear their ideas, to hear how they are energized by the idea of college continues to inspire me. So just, this year, I primarily traveled to the state of Illinois, Washington, D.C., been out to, California, Texas, and several other places. And just, while you see what the headlines are and you see what people are saying about it, to talk with the students and to hear, how excited they are about college, what the opportunities they see, in college is something that's, very, very exciting. And so I say just, to have those conversations on a daily basis, to receive the emails, is something that continues to give me a lot of hope and inspiration, because there is a lot of energy behind it. And I think students want to go to college. They just want to know, how can I get the resources? What are the opportunities? And what is information to put me in the best place so that I can be successful in whatever college I potentially may attend?
Yeah, I'll say it's the students. It takes me to a story because I love spending time one-on-one with our students. And a year ago, in this month, I was invited to speak at a sports conference in Morocco. And so we were able to take 3 students with me that were funded all from private dollars from the school, 2 young women and a young man. 2 of the 3 had never been on a plane, and one had only been on a plane once, and I was taking them to North Africa, right? And so we went on this trip, and they came with me in a week, and we toured all around Morocco, and came back, and a few weeks had gone by, and my assistant came in and said, the students that you took to Morocco are here to see you. They just wanted to stop by. It was right before we broke for winter break. And I said, okay, tell them to come in. And they made me they took a bunch of pictures on the trip, 3 of which was me falling asleep in a hotel lobby. But they took a bunch of pictures on a trip and put it into one of those bound books. And they had printed in it, and it was very touching to me because they had printed in it, "Thank you for giving us the best week of our lives." And what gives me hope, Michelle, is, I always go back to a lot of quotes when I speak, and there's a great quote that success isn't really about what you accomplish, it's about what you inspire others to accomplish. And so if I could see 1 or 2 students, or you see that spark in 1 or 2 students, and know that that spark's going to have a ripple effect on a community or a family, that gives me hope.
Well, can we all take a minute to thank our wonderful panelists for an incredible conversation? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm hoping that we've made it clear that college is not just about earning potential, it's also about the human potential, and that's what we try to do at College Now every day. We think that there is universal talent, but not always universal opportunity, and we want to make sure those 2 things come together, so we're excited about that. I am now going to say, we're about to begin the audience Q&A. For our live stream audience, I'm Dr. Michelle Scott Taylor, Chief Executive Officer at College Now Greater Cleveland and moderator for today's conversation. We are talking about the case for college and how higher education is still the key to success. Joining me on stage is Timothy Fields, Senior Associate Dean in Undergraduate Admission at Emory University and author of the best-selling book, The Black Family's Guide to College Admissions, and R.J. Nemer, the 19th President of the University of Akron. We welcome questions from everyone, City Club members, guests, students, and those joining via our live stream at cityclub.org. If you'd like to text a question, please do so at 330-541-5794, and a City Club staff member will work to try to work it into the program. May we have the first question?
Hi, my name is Enima Donko. I work with Open Doors Academy. We are an after-school program. Hi, Michelle. I want to ask a question about affordability. I heard all of you, and I see some of the things that you're saying, but I feel the families that we serve, they do understand the importance of college, but the problem is that it's expensive. Apart from that, they are positioned in a way that most of them still depend on their adult children to support homes. So the children will still go to college and not have the experience you're talking about. Either they are studying or going to work so that they can support the family. How do we strategize and advocate to the government to make college affordable? Because we are the only developed country that is still struggling with affordability with college. There's a possibility that families can still invest, but no matter how we see the cost, it's still big for most of the families we serve. Thank you.
Hey, who wants to take that one?
I can take that one first. Thank you for your question. In regards to the one, to some of the adult students you're talking about, or to help the household, and again, I referenced Jimmy Malone in our audience, who has sent a bunch of students to the University of Akron through his privately funded scholarship. One in particular comes in mind, a young guy by the name of Cameron, who is basically working 2 jobs to support his mom and his grandmother. But we didn't want him to miss out on the college experience. And so working with him in our athletic department, he now works for the university helping our basketball team. So he is able to earn money and still have that college experience. Now that's one isolated example, but on top of that, one of the gentlemen I brought with me today, Dr. Matt Akers, is our liaison, our government affairs liaison, spending a lot of time, to your point, in both Washington and Columbus, advocating what we call SSI, State Share of Instruction. All of the universities, all of the public universities in the state of Ohio are part of a consortium known as IUC, Inter-University Council. From us to Cleveland State to a school down in Columbus, we all meet and convene to advocate with government about the need and the importance of that support.
So what I'll add is, and this is, speaking as somebody who works at a private institution, is, utilizing a lot of tools that are available. So there's at every, college throughout the country, public or private, they're required to have a net price calculator. So going on those sites and seeing how much would it actually cost us to go to that school. We partner with an organization called QuestBridge that is really geared towards helping kind of lower first generation students access college at most of the selective schools in the country. And so I would say at a place like Emory, we have a program that if a family makes less than $200,000, it's free tuition for any of those students. That, we have, financial aid that we can, pay almost all of the money that's available for families who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And so I think it's important to kind of build out a list, look at different schools, look at the, financial aid opportunities, because a lot of students, unfortunately, don't consider some of the, smaller liberal arts colleges or some of the more selective schools just because they say, oh, I can't afford to go there. But those schools could be the schools that could provide a lot of money, if not all of the money, for students to go access a higher education. So we just want to try, I would say, we want to try and combat undermatching. To, don't assume that you can't go to a place like Emory, a place like Rice, a place like WashU, if that's something that you aspire to do, because more than likely, depending upon your situation, the money's going to be there so you can have a full college experience.
I'll just add, we have to continue to push the notion, to push the idea that higher ed is a public good and it benefits our society. I think the pendulum has swung completely, and I think that we need to do a much better job of articulating why education after the high school diploma is good for everyone, and how could it be good for government in some kind. We have to really make that argument. I think that's another piece of the puzzle.
Thank you so much for today. It's been really interesting. My name's Joan Chase. I'm a vice president at the Fund for Economic Future. I'm also going to throw Michael Scope under the bus because he and I were chit-chatting about this before. One of the most interesting pieces of research I saw in this past calendar year was the Burning Glass Institute's research on underemployment among college graduates. It's really fascinating. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. But the headline takeaway from that work was that 50% of all college graduates are employed in jobs that do not require college educations. What are some strategies that students and families should be taking? And then what are strategies that institutions of higher education should be taking to reduce those numbers?
I can speak to that one first. Michelle, you referenced your degree that you had from UA. Mm-hmm. We've pared down quite a bit through the past decade plus to really look at where the demands are and what degrees we're offering. So for example, many of our students are coming for nursing, engineering, human resources. We don't really have as many of the generalized degrees that somebody, he or she, may end up, for example, in a call center at a big insurance company. Because our students are usually self-financing, many of whom are first-generation students. They're not coming really to the university saying, well, I just kind of want to find myself and study something that I find interesting. And it's like I said, they come in more with the attitude of how many years, how much, and what's my job going to be? And we don't find our nursing students pursuing careers outside of nursing or engineers pursuing things outside of engineering. We actually have a good problem in both of those verticals that we don't have enough students to satisfy the demand we're getting. Accounting is one of those as well. So we're looking at the data saying, where are the jobs and how are we going to offer those degrees, again, at an affordable price. And I don't want to give you a false statistic, but I would share with you, based on my knowledge of where I see our graduates coming back and where they're working, I don't know any of them that have been placed in an area that they didn't study, that degree was necessary to get the interview.
Yeah, we were obviously had a lot of questions that we were going to cover, but one of the things was on liberal arts. And so in my book, we have a chapter called Liberal Arts is a Luxury. And so where we talk about, many students go to college, oh, I'm just here for the sake of learning. I'm going to get this degree, and I don't want to offend anybody, so I'm not going to say in what area, so I'll keep that to myself.
You can say sociology, political science, and French.
No. But what I'll say is does this degree track towards a career? And what does that look like? And so I think, we try and share, we want people to be much more intentional about what am I majoring in and what does that look like as a career? So, there are people who, I talked about the people who are paying full freight to go to Emory. Sure, you can go to college for 4 years, figure out what you want to do. Then you can come back and work for our company that we have, no problem. That's not the instance that most people are in. And I think as we were talking about accessibility, as we were talking about, underrepresented students who are maybe first generation who are going to college, I think there needs to be a lot more intention about what are you majoring in, what does that look like as a career, as opposed that you just have the luxury to go to this school that you're already extending yourself as far as paying for and just studying, insert, academic area that's not going to track directly. So I think we have to be intentional about what classes and careers are we putting students on the path on so that they can be employed immediately following. And then I also think there needs to be a bigger investment in kind of career services offices. What are the internship opportunities? What are the research opportunities? What are people looking over people's cover letters, resumes? And I think that will also help in providing students direction as they prepare to leave college as well.
I just want to add, though, a slightly differing opinion. I think students should be able to go and find themselves and explore topics and learn about things and learn about, other people and other cultures and all the wonderful things that college offers. I do think we need to be honest in helping students build social capital, though, because most people leave college sometimes not knowing exactly what they want to do. I'm sure there are many people in here with a degree and you're not working in your degree, or you have children who are not working in the degree. I think adults need to do a better job of ushering our young graduates into careers and opportunities so they can continue to develop their professional skills and build social capital, because I think that's the next iteration. We do have many students who walk away like, I did all this and I don't have a job. We need to do a better job, I believe, and I think programs like ours, where we have a mentoring program, should be instituted in other places so that students can have a warm handoff to opportunities for careers. I think that's a missing piece as well, similar to this idea of better career service offerings at colleges and universities.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Demaro. I'm a retired high school social studies teacher and was honored to serve as president of the Ohio Education Association for the past 6 years. I wanted to go back to the political conversation that you had earlier, and I'm not going to put you on the spot, President Nemer, to ask you, press you on your Senate Bill 1.
Sounds like you are. Usually when somebody says that, they're about to.
I want to turn it and just looking forward. As you look to the state, as you look to the federal government, and you could say, this is the kind of policy environment, the policy climate that we need so that our state and federal government are true partners in helping to ensure accessibility, quality, positive outcomes for students. What would that look like? And again, coming from the K-12 space, can you also talk about the role of alignment with K-12 in higher education as you think about that?
Sure. You want to go ahead
No, I was
first?
just gonna, so you're asking what is an ideal policy environment that we should be looking towards to help better align state, federal policymakers in helping us move this forward? And then how should we better align K-12 with higher ed so that there's more of a seamless transition for students and maybe some efficiencies in funding, perhaps?
So in terms of efficiencies, I'll go back to the system we have. Like I said, there's 14 schools in the state of Ohio. So the University of Akron is 40 minutes away from Cleveland State, 20 minutes away from Kent State, and an hour away from Youngstown State. The presidents, we're already in the conversation of how can we achieve better efficiencies. We all have our own billing departments. We all have our own IT departments. So and the state is partnering with us. The Ohio Department of Higher Ed is partnering with us to figure out, okay, well, if you're a student at Kent State or you're a student at Youngstown or wherever, you don't really care where the bill comes from. So do we look at centralized billing? Do we look at how we centralize maybe facilities management? How do we achieve those efficiencies? And the state wants to see that, obviously, because it's taxpayer money, and we want to use those resources wisely. So there is a lot of conversation, there is a lot of collaboration that happens between our institution and your elected officials. I don't think anybody is going to say, oh, it's a bad idea to back higher ed, but we want to be sensitive with the money. We want to be stewards, good stewards of the investment the state is making in that. And it really just comes down to, frankly, smart decision making. How can we achieve better scale? How can we achieve better efficiencies by partnering with some of our fellow state universities? The second part of your question with K through 12, we have a really good relationship with Akron Public Schools. We obviously have a great relationship with College Now. I don't think it's ever too early to start talking to students about the importance of school, about the importance of good study habits, about the importance of having those goals. I speak at a lot of high schools. I did do a kindergarten read last year, which was fun, except I don't believe I made this mistake as a parent. I gave them candy before I started reading. But it's been a while since I've had kindergartners. But we're trying to, again, foster those relationships so college doesn't seem so scary, so opaque, that it seems more accessible. And it's more of a realistic path or something that, you just assume then you're going after a high school. It's not something that is questioned as much as expected. And we really want to create that narrative.
Yeah, the only thing, I'll just double down on that early exposure. I think a lot of times people think that the college admission process starts when you fill out an application senior year. When the reality is, depending upon what your aspirations to college, that process may start in 7th or 8th grade as far as what classes that you've been exposed to make sure that you can make it to calculus if you want to go on to said school that you're looking to. So I think kind of that early exposure is a big part of it. I will also say last week I was at a national meeting and I was correctly corrected by an advisor who worked with New York City schools as far as preparation for post-secondary education. And she says, our office is called career readiness. And I said, oh, college and career? She's like, no, career. Because what they're focusing on is your career can have any number of pathways. And so we want to make sure that students are exposed to those multiple area of pathways because where we're making the case for college in this conversation, the reality is everybody's not going to go to college, and that's perfectly fine. People may have other pathways that they may, want to take on, go into the military or do some other things. And we want to make sure that students have exposure to what does a career look like. And that, I think, early exposure is very, very important, as the president shared.
We've changed the way that we advise students, especially for that. How can we help students, younger students, think about the career and then what's the educational needs to get that career instead of starting with the education first for that very reason?
Well, first, I want to say thank you to President Nemer as well as Dean Fields for your commentary and feedback on this timely discussion. My name is Dr. Nicole Wilson. I am a student success practitioner and scholar here in the Cleveland area. And my question, actual comment, which I would love to get your feedback on, is related to the case for college pertaining to the colleges themselves. We talked about what students can do, what families can do, what nonprofit organizations, how they can assist, but sometimes colleges aren't designed for students that we're serving. Particularly, you mentioned QuestBridge for low-income first-generation college students, but when we think about the quest for prestige, so we talk about the age-old contentious argument about access versus excellence or prestige. And as institutions are striving to be R1s, they are seemingly leaving students behind who would benefit the most from a college education. So when we talk about the case for college, how do colleges get out of their way in order to ensure that those who are needing the education and would benefit from the economy in order to having that education so that it can be accessible?
Excellent question. What I would say, I think, is it's very important that we understand and we do a better job. Colleges better share their missions and what they do. Like we started this conversation, 4,000 college universities throughout the country. There are two-year schools, there are trade schools, there's four-year public, there's private, there's historically black college universities, there's minority-serving institutions, there's tribal institutions for Native and Indigenous students. There's all these type of institutions, and I think often we have this conversation very kind of thinking about college as a particular type of experience. I can say that my experience at Morehouse College, going to historically black college university, was transcendent as far as my experience. There's nothing like it. And so I end up having these conversations at Emory where parents like, oh, did you go to Emory? I said, no, I went to Morehouse. Oh, so what do you think is better, Morehouse or Emory? I said, they're two separate places. What are you looking for in your experience? If your culture, your identity is a very important part of you and you want to be in a place for 4 years where you are more than likely with people who look like you, then Morehouse is a great place, and you should do that. If you say, I'm interested in being a doctor, then Emory has 8 hospitals affiliated with it. It has a hospital right there on their campus. So there are resources that Emory has that Morehouse doesn't. And so I would hope that as we go about having this larger conversations, we really say, like, what school is this? What do they offer? What can they provide and help expose students to that? Because I do think that there's a college for every student in this country. It's just how do we get the mission? How do we get students to understand what these different schools offer so that the students can benefit from their experiences there?
And thank you for your comment. We're an R2 institution, and while it certainly is an important part of who we are at the University of Akron, as I've often shared, we wouldn't exist but for our students. And so while we put certainly resources into our research and the importance of it, we also put resources into something we call Zip Assist, which is a fund for students, and if their car's broken down, there's money there to help them. If they can't pay the electric bill, there's money there to help them. We have something called Campus Cupboard that is particularly busy lately, where students can come and just shop for free. And these are all things that both are supported by private donations, but also by the school, because we want to make sure that we keep those students there. That's our lifeblood. Like I said, research will always be important to every university, but students are the ones that keep the university there. And we need to recognize that our community both feeds our students, our community feeds us our students, but we need to also feed our community with our students. And so we really do try to balance that. Thank you, though.
Thank you to President Nemer, Tim Fields, and Michelle Scott Taylor for joining us today at the City Club of Cleveland. Forums like this one are made possible thanks to generous support from individuals like you. You can learn about how to become a guardian of free speech at cityclub.org. Today's forum is part of the City Club's Authors and Conversations series in partnership with Cuyahoga Arts and Culture and the Cuyahoga County Public Library. It is also the annual David Warshawski Memorial Forum. David Warshawski joined the City Club in 1918 when he was 25 years old and was the City Club's second oldest member, having been a member for 71 years. During this time, he served as treasurer, vice president, director of the City Club. We want to welcome the Warshawski family and friends who are here with us today and thank them for their generosity and for the over 100 years of support for free speech and democracy. The City Club would like to welcome students joining us from Shaker Heights High School and welcome guests at tables hosted by the Cleveland branch of the NAACP, College Now Greater Cleveland, the Northeastern Ohio Education Association, Say Yes to Cleveland Scholarship, and the University of Akron. Coming up next Friday, November 21st, we will be joined by leadership at IBM and the Cleveland Clinic to discuss the new quantum computer deployed at the Cleveland Clinic. What does it mean to have one of the first quantum computers powering advanced biomedical research right here in Northeastern Ohio? WKYC's Betsy Kling will moderate. Thank you once again to President Nemer, Tim and Michelle, and to our members and friends of the City Club. I'm Lee Friedman, and we are now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.
The ideas expressed in City Club forums are those of the speakers and not of the City Club of Cleveland, IdeaStream Public Media, or their sponsors. Production and distribution of City Club forums on IdeaStream Public Media are made possible by PNC and the United Black Fund of Greater Cleveland, Incorporated.